morning to everybody. We would just today continue with the discussion of question answers. We have discussed the in-text questions and we have to discuss questions understanding the text on page number 54 and also the assignment that I've just shared with you. Okay, so let's move on to understanding the text. Question number 1. Why do you think Gandhi considered the Champaran episodes to be a turning point in his life? Why did he consider this as a turning point? Yes. Yes, Tushita. Little bit.
Yes, ma'am. He considered this as a turning point in his life because it was the first satyagraha movement in India, and it had given back him courage and self-reliance back to the Champaran peasants, and he got support from thousands of people.
Yes, very good. Anything else, Akarshita, you want to add on to it?
Gandhiji felt that it was not something extraordinary that he did. It was something very ordinary and very basic, because what he was asked, that the Britishers cannot order him in his own country, and that is not something very out of the box thing. And secondly, it was as Tushita said, it was not an act of oppression because it was satyagraha, and even he forced on the importance of being self-reliant, on being independent, and if we depend upon anybody else outside India, that shows our weakness.
Yes,
So
very
that
good.
was the most
That is
important
why
thing.
he did
And
not
he
agree to having CF Andrews with him as a prop, as a support. Anything else, Mehak, or you want to add on? Anything? यही था ठीक है so he adopted his policy of non-violence, non-cooperation, non-violence, and he also did not cooperate, and through these policies, and he was, but still he was released without bail, and he was allowed to remain free. So he just wanted to give them a solid proof that they could not order him in his own country. Okay, and that was a turning point because he wanted to teach the farmers a lesson on self-reliance, and he was able to do that. Okay, and also he was able to free them from what? From fear of the Britishers. How was Gandhi able to influence lawyers? Give instances. How was he able to influence lawyers? Somebody else. I cannot have Akashit answering all the questions. How was he able to influence lawyers? Give. Can you come and sit here? Gandhiji was an outsider. Still, he stood up for those farmers, and this thing influenced the lawyers of that state that we are belongings of that state, and still we aren't standing up for those farmers, for our brothers, and this influenced them to to do good and to do better and help those farmers. Help the farmers, and they stood up and stand up for the country. Yes, very good. So they agreed to court arrest only after Gandhiji made them feel that it is their duty to stand up for the country, for the farmers, because he was a stranger, and they not only belonged to the adjoining districts, they not only lived in the adjoining district, but they also had fought for these farmers. They had taken so many times, they had taken huge amount of fee uh, from them. So now they could not leave them in the lurch. So that is why it was Gandhi who was able to influence them. What was the attitude of the average Indian in smaller localities towards advocates of home rule? What was the attitude of the average Indian in smaller localities towards advocates of home rule? Yes. What was their attitude? Attitude of, we had discussed about the professor who gave shelter to Gandhiji. What was the name of the professor? Professor?
Malkani.
Yes, Professor Malkani. So what was otherwise the attitude of the average Indian? Akashita, yes, Professor Malkani. ठीक है. Mankar, can you give the answer? What was the attitude of the average Indian in smaller localities towards the advocates of home rule? क्या था attitude बेटा बताओ? The average Indian scholar were afraid to show sympathy for the advocates of home rule. Okay, yes. So, and they were afraid to give shelter to, and they were afraid to show sympathy for the advocates of home rule. But going against everything, Professor Malkani did give shelter to Gandhiji. How do we know that ordinary people too contributed to the freedom movement? How do we know that? Yes. How do we know that ordinary people also contributed to the freedom movement? By not cooperating with the Britishers, the same the ordinary people did. They did not cooperate with the Britishers. They stopped going to the schools and they stopped following the rules of the Britishers. Anything else? She said whatever Gandhiji did, the ordinary people followed him, whatever he used to say and whatever he used to do. They stopped going to schools. Anything else? Anything that you can find from the text? Aryan.
Ma'am, the success of the Battle of Champaran made a way for normal people and all the Indians to participate in the freedom movement. Many women gave up their work and they started coming forward in order to help Gandhi and other freedom movements to be mobilized in the country so that they could they could fight for their own freedom. And there were other mass movements like salt movement, quit India movement, which mainly involved the normal people who came forward to help Gandhiji and also the freedom struggles of the country so that they could be free from the Britishers.
Okay. Anything else? Anjia Kashita, you want to add on to it? Can I?
Yes, ma'am. So basically, from this text, the most that when the officers felt were feeling powerless. So that's a very important thing because they were feeling powerless because Gandhiji had so much support that without his support, without his cooperation, nothing could happen. It felt like they could not even remove a piece of paper or a leaf or move a leaf without Gandhiji's support because he was being so influential because he was doing something that nobody thought of for the poor, and he was there between them like an ordinary citizen.
Okay, and what else? Somebody had written something.
Ma'am, we had there was a specific line mentioned, ma'am, that the peasants thought that they also had their rights.
Yes.
So after this Champaran Satyagraha, people got to know that we also have right and we can protest and we
Yes.
can even win a battle against the
Yes.
Britishers
Very good.
because the officers had agreed to Gandhiji's terms.
Yes, because they felt till then, they were in so much of dread of the Britishers that they never retaliated, they never voiced their opinion against them. But the Champaran episode gave them this feeling that even they had rights and they also could fight for their rights. Okay, and if they wanted to, and they could also win. So this was the thing, and somebody had written also something. I'm just going to read out. The ordinary people, the ordinary people stood with Gandhiji at every juncture. At Motihari, they flocked in thousands. When they came to know that the Mahatma had some trouble with the authorities, they were ready to do anything at his bidding. So, in this way, yes, they contributed towards the freedom movement. They too showed their gave their contribution. Champaran Satyagraha gave voice to the nation. Yes, good. Okay. Now, can anyone just share the assignment that I had in your Google Classroom and also in your English group? Question number 1. Who is the author of the lesson Indigo? It is Louis Fisher. Yes. Next is, why did Gandhiji fight in Champaran? Why did he fight in Champaran?
Ma'am, to help the peasants, the injustice they met due
Yes.
to Britishers.
Yes, to help the peasants, the injustice that was being done to the peasants, the poor indigo sharecroppers. What was Gandhiji's demand from the British landlords? What was Gandhiji's demand?
Give 50% of the compensation, but he agreed on 25%.
Yes, demand was 50% of the compensation, but he agreed to 25%. Okay, otherwise, when he said that I need 50% compensation, at that point of time, he appears to be adamant. Okay, and what is adamant? Stubbornness कि आप
Unshakable.
हाँ stubbornness कि आप जिद पकड़ लो कि इतने से कम पे तो मैं मानूंगा नहीं, but जब उन्होंने ये बोला 20, उनको लगा था कि गांधी जी बिल्कुल नहीं मानेंगे 25% पे, बट ही readily agreed because he knew it and he wanted to prove this point that the amount of money was compensation was much less important than the fact that the Britishers along with the money, they had to surrender a part of their what? A part of their, we've done it, we've discussed it, their prestige, their honor along with it. ठीक है, ये हमने किया हुआ है डिस्कस. So he demanded 50% refund, but he agreed to 25%. Okay. How much did Indigo planters offer to pay?
Percent.
Yes, 25%. So why did Gandhiji decide to go to Muzaffarpur? Why did he decide to go to Muzaffarpur? He could have directly come to Champaran. He had got the details from Rajkumar Shukla. Then why did he then decide to go to Muzaffarpur?
Ma'am, to get better details about the incident that Rajkumar Shukla was unable to provide to Gandhiji.
Yes, he was incapable of providing because he was an illiterate farmer. So the best he could provide, he had given the information, but to get the complete details of everything, he wanted to go to Muzaffarpur in order to consult whom? Muzaffarpur में किसको consult करना था?
Ma'am, lawyers.
Why? Who was Rajkumar Shukla?
Rajkumar Shukla was an ordinary peasant in Champaran who was very illiterate and very thin looking.
Yes, thin looking, and he was also one of the Indigo sharecroppers. Why did Rajkumar Shukla come to Lucknow at annual Congress party session?
Ma'am, to complain about the injustice of the landlord system in Bihar.
Yes.
And somebody has sent him to meet Gandhiji in this regard.
Yes, somebody had asked him to go and meet Gandhiji in this regard. Why did Mr. Shukla meet Gandhiji? We know it. Why was Satyagraha movement launched in Champaran? With the same question.
Because of Indigo shareholders.
So can you just repeat it, Akarshita?
And because of Indigo shareholders that
Yes.
is happening in Champaran.
Okay. Why did the British want the peasants to pay compensation? Somebody else, not Akarshita or Dushita, someone else. Why did the British want the peasants to pay compensation?
Ma'am, synthetic indigo was discovered in Germany, and due to discovery of synthetic indigo meant that the indigo nobody would buy the raw indigo,
Yes.
on which the sharecropping had been done, and the previous contract of British said that all the indigo, the crop will go to the Britisher.
Yes.
As a tax of sort of thing that they are allowing them to do farming on their land. But due to synthetic indigo, the raw indigo had no value. So
Yes.
the Britishers thought that as a compensation to that, they don't need the indigo, but the farmers need to pay a compensation to the British.
Yes, they need to pay compensation in order to free them from that agreement. The entire agreement, in order to free them, they've demanded compensation because the demand and prices of indigo was bound to fall because of that synthetic indigo. Why did Gandhiji agree to the planters offer? यहाँ पे वो planters ही कह रहे हैं, ठीक है? Planters offer of 25% refunds to the farmers. Why did Gandhiji agree to the planters offer of 25% refund? अभी discuss किया था हमने.
Ma'am, because money is not important, but the fact that the landlord risked their status and their prestige is
Yes.
more important.
Yes, they had to surrender their prestige, their honor, their dignity, their status, along with the money, whatever money they were offering. Who was Sir Edmund in the lesson?
Lieutenant Governor.
He was the governor. On which page can we find him, Pushita? Page number 51. Yes, page 51 towards the end. So ऐसे भी क्वेश्चन आ सकते हैं बेटा आपको, ठीक है? तो हर कैरेक्टर का पता होना चाहिए. ये तो जब हम चैप्टर पढ़ रहे होते हैं तब तो हमें पता होता है. आफ्टर दैट वी टेंड टू फॉरगेट द अनइम्पॉर्टेंट कैरेक्टर्स, ठीक है? इतनी इंपॉर्टेंट जिनकी यहाँ पे नहीं है चैप्टर में, हम भूल जाते हैं. हाँ, तो हमें एडवर्ड गेट का कैरेक्टर स्केच किया जाएगा. तो पर ये अब जैसे ये क्वेश्चन आ गया, वन लाइनर, who was Edward Gate? So he was the lieutenant governor. Okay. ठीक है. Next, why did Gandhiji consider the Champaran episode a turning point? We've discussed it so many times. How did Kasturbai help Gandhiji? Yes. How did she help?
Ma'am, first,
How?
Ma'am, she began. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, after the Champaran episode of the Satyagraha, Gandhiji also had realized that there were several social problems in Champaran, like untouchability, and the people were not literate. So, to counter this, Gandhiji asked teachers and his followers that please to come and start teaching people of Champaran.
Yes.
And his wife Kasturbai came along with his son and started schools there and discussed about women hygiene with the women living in Champaran,
Yes.
and also made them literate.
She taught them about the ashram rules also on cleanliness, on personal cleanliness, on community sanitation, on hygiene and everything. Yes. First question, next short answer question, 30 to 40 words. Why did Gandhiji oppose Andrews helping him in Champaran? We have discussed it in detail, but I don't want Akarshita, Nakul or Tushita to answer. Yes, Mehak or Bolo. Gandhiji, Andrews, Andrews was Gandhiji's follower, and he residents of that tribe wanted Andrews to stay with them in order to have a bigger voice and in order to prove that they have support of a Britisher. But Gandhiji opposed Andrews staying with them because he felt that it is their battle, and having Andrews on their side is not a fair claim, and it would show that they are weak. They are weak. Okay, and so they have and to. They are dependent on somebody else, on outsider. Okay, good. Next, the weakness of your heart. And you should not seek a prop in Mr. Andrews because he happens to be an Englishman. So this is what Gandhi ji. Unequal जैसे कुछ होती है. क्या चीज? एक ये लाइन थी इसमें जो हम इसमें फिल कर सकते हैं. क्या? ये unequal fight ऐसे कुछ है. Yes, in this unequal, yes, this is a very important line. And Gandhiji said that in this unequal fight, it would. Do you think it would be helpful if we have an Englishman on our side? Okay, so he felt that you have to fight your own battles, you have to be self-reliant. This was a basic lesson that he wanted to teach his countrymen. So he felt that we are not to seek a prop in Andrews. Why did Gandhiji agree to a settlement of mere 25%? This question we have discussed n number of times, so we won't be discussing it again. Okay, next is why did Gandhiji feel that taking the Champaran case to court was useless? Yes, why did he feel so? ये भी पढ़ा है हमने. Why did he feel that taking this case to court is useless? He said going to law courts is totally useless. Why did he feel so? बताओ.
ma'am, because he felt
Tushita, yes, give the answer.
Yes, ma'am, because he felt that the real relief for the peasants would come only when they become fearless and the peasants were in acute panic.
Very good. So he felt that taking these kinds of cases like the Champaran case to courts is totally useless because the peasants are so fear struck, they're so crushed that law courts are not going to help them in any way. Okay, so real relief is going to come only when they are free from fear. Next, can anyone just read out the question? मेरी तो eyesight बेटा बहुत ही weak है, मेरे को तो दिखता ही नहीं है कुछ. How did the Champaran peasants react when they heard that a Mahatma had come to help them? Finally, could read. Hanji. How did the Champaran peasants react? What was their reaction? How did they show their reaction? Akashita, I'm going to give you extra marks for always being ready to respond. She's always the first one, to raise her hand. Hanji, chalo bolo. Bolo Akashita. Bolo, bolo.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, basically, when they heard that Mahatma had come to help them, there was a ray of hope in their hearts that somebody is working for them, and they showed it by being fearless, by being gathering when Gandhiji was about to go to court.
Yes, so they gathered in huge numbers to just show their support for a Mahatma, for this Mahatma who had come to help them out. What made the Lieutenant Governor drop the case against Gandhiji? Yes, why did he drop the case against Gandhiji without the case to be dropped? Why did it happen without?
because of the support and the influence that Mahatma Gandhi had on thousands of people.
Yes, and also they felt powerless. Initially, they thought that they were going to consult their seniors, but nothing came out. Even after Gandhiji refused to apply for bail, refused to procure bail, still they felt powerless. They didn't know what to do, so they preferred that the case should be dropped. Next, why did राजकुमार शुक्ला want to take गांधी जी? ये तो पता है, नहीं हमें करना. Same question, ऐसे ऐसे question बार बार क्यों होते हैं? Why is the Champaran episode considered to be the beginning of the India's struggle for independence? Yes, this is from where the chapter starts. He said, I will tell you how it happened that I decided to urge the departure of the British. So how was this a beginning of the Indian struggle for independence? How was this episode? Batao. Speak up. Somebody else.
May I, ma'am?
Let me just see if anybody else can answer. Hanji Nakul bolo.
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, I would like to begin my answer with the saying that the Champaran Satyagraha was the place where a Mahatma was born. So, Gandhiji had come to India, ma'am, in 1915, but there was no as such any which brought him to limelight. And the Champaran Satyagraha was I must say, it was a symbol which acted as a ray of hope for Indians as independence, because it was the first ever time the Britishers and their authoritarian rule was suppressed by a very
It was
peaceful movement.
suppressed, it was even challenged. It was challenged by the
was
Indians.
challenged.
Yes. And this was the first
Ma'am was
time that during this episode, only the civil disobedience movement had won. It was the first time that civil disobedience movement had triumphed. So all this acted like a ray of hope for the Indian struggle for independence. You can elaborate it on,
Yes, ma'am.
add on.
Ma'am, this only, and all the sections of the society, not only the poorer ones, but as we saw, the lawyers also, and each and every section came together as united and decided to fight together, as it was as a very normal gesture by Gandhiji of saying that I'm ready to go to jail. So that made the Indians of or the people of Champaran think that if an outsider coming here and trying to solve our problem is ready to go to jail for us, we all need to unite and make sure that we together fight with him. We stand with him
Yes, we
united.
stand
So, ma'am,
united.
this made a image of Gandhiji that he was a person who was challenging the British rule with in a peaceful manner.
Yes.
And this, ma'am, he gained a lot of respect and confidence and trust of Indians. And, ma'am, this later resulted in the as the beginning of Indian freedom struggle.
Yes, very good. Give an account of Gandhiji's efforts to secure justice for the poor indigo sharecroppers of Champaran. This is again the same thing, the same question, the chapter, the gist of the chapter that you have to give here. Okay. Next is, what did Gandhiji do to remove social and cultural backwardness in Champaran villages? What did he do to remove social? ये हमने last में पढ़ा था, आज भी हमने discuss किया. What did he do to remove social and cultural backwardness? So for this, he wanted to do something immediately, and he did. What was it that he did? Apart from, you're going to find it on page number 53. हाँ जी चलो तुषिता बताओ.
Yes, ma'am. And he wanted to do something to remove the cultural and social backwardness, and he appealed for teachers and two young disciples of Gandhi, Mahadev Desai and Narhari Parekh,
Yes.
and their wives volunteered themselves for work, and several others also responded from different distant parts of the country.
Very good.
And primary schools were opened in 6 villages, and Kasturba taught the ashram rules on personal cleanliness and community cleanliness.
Yes.
And she also talked to the women about their filthy clothes, and health conditions were also miserable. So Gandhiji got a doctor to volunteer his services, and the 3 medicines were available. One was castor oil, quinine, and sulfur ointment something.
Ointment.
So
Ointment.
anyone is
What is an ointment? Ointment क्या होती है? Cream. It's a cream. ठीक है? Yes, ointment is a cream. हाँ जी. Skin. Yes, ठीक है बताओ आप.
yes, This was given for various treatments, and he never contented himself with large political or economic solutions, and he worked for the upliftment of villages and poor sections of society.
Yes, very good. So the entire answer you would find on page number 53, and so you have to keep in mind each and everything, even the names of the lesser important people. For example, the lieutenant governor that we had, so Sir Edmund. So this is all about this chapter. Please complete your assignment along with the textbook questions and send them by Thursday. And we're going to start with the poem Aunt Jennifer Cycles next. Okay, okay. So that is all as far as this chapter is concerned. I'll just take your attendance.